Hello, Truth Seekers, and welcome to our second podcast from Spirit Lights Healing Center. Um, you'll see behind me, I'm in a different spot in my home at the moment. I'm figuring out what my best places are to do these, and we will gradually work that out as well. But I hope you're well, and I hope you're finding a way in your path and in your life, which is always a challenge for any of us, no matter how inspired we sometimes feel or think that we are connected to the divine. We are all experiencing the human form and everything that goes with it. There's no getting out of that one. I sort of wanted to pick up on something that I mentioned in my introduction last week, and that was about the gifts of spirit. I was talking about mediumship and healing, etc. And there's so many other things like inspirational writing or just the thoughts that come to you as an individual throughout the day. You might suddenly realize or think to yourself, "Oh, gee, I'm thinking of somebody I haven't thought about for 5 years, and why is it I want to call them?" And a minute or two later, they've called you. Or you've had a friend in your life for some reason, and it's usually only one or two where this happens with, most times, and where you might live apart a bit, let's say a few hundred miles, but you always seem to know when the other one's about to call. We can look at these things as synchronicity, and we can look at these happenings as, well, you're similar types of personalities, you have sort of similar interests, so there will be a natural predisposition to call and to stay in touch. And that's very true. And we have to, put that on the table. But there's also the inexplicable happenings that we experience with friends. And I'll give you just one of mine, because I have many. But I'm starting with the small stuff right now. But one of my mentors, my very first mentor, Ruth, was brilliant and deep and powerful and wise and all those wonderful things. But very human, very Taurus German, but fantastic to the core. Anyway, she lived south of the border, down in Whidbey Island. I lived up here in Canada. And I was coming home from work one day, and I just had this thought to go to one of the grocery stores that is at that point out of my way. For some reason, I thought, I'm going to go there. No other thought came to me. My mind was busy with work still. I was buzzing around in my head all the things I had to get done for the next day and the next week, and a whole lots of prepping and planning. Anyway, I'm walking through Save on Foods, actually, for anybody who knows that from Canada, especially particularly from the West Coast. And the place is packed. It's big. I mean, this is a big place. And I go down an aisle. I'm looking at something. I turn around, and guess who's coming down the aisle? Ruth. She had come up from Whidbey Island that day to see a very, very old friend of hers who wasn't doing well. So she knew that she didn't have a lot of time, and she knew I'd be working and other people really wouldn't have the time to meet up. So she was just going to get across the border, see this lady, and go back home. I mean, again, the odds, the chances, you do the math. Oh, probability experts out there, do the math. I turned around, there she was, and it was just the most fantastic 2.5 minutes. And I said, Ruth, I never come to this store anymore. I haven't come here for 5 years at least, because it's out of my way. And she said, "Oh, Alan, I just came up to see," it was Elizabeth, I believe this lady's name was. And I was just up for, the afternoon to see her. She's not doing well, and Jim and I are going home right now. We're just going across the border, but we thought we'd pick something up, so we could eat on the way. And it was just one of those wonderful, magical moments. And this is what I say to people when they're dealing with spirit: don't always look for the grandeur, the coming of the angels and the light surrounding you and the profound dream and the all those wonderful things that do happen, and we want those. There's no doubt. Anyone who's had those experiences, you want more of those. That's the carrot. See, the spirit world, I believe anyway, works with the carrot and stick motivational. And that is, here's the carrot. Are you going to chase it? How much are you prepared to sort of do to live a life that allows your vibration, what you create within your own thoughts and the way you live and the way you deal with your life, how that then allows spirit to work within your life? and how deeply can that happen. And even if we're not in our deepest place, or our most profound place, in terms of sitting in meditation and attunement with God and the divine, if we're still doing some sort of practice, we will find that experiences like this are quite common. And often, what I found for myself over the years was when I wasn't able to work with it sort of in my daily life, it would be through dream state that experiences would come. Many profound dreams with people that I have known that have crossed over, or premonitions of world events. And there'll be a day that I start talking about what some of those were, and some of them were really quite extraordinary. But the manifestation of the gifts of spirit can come in a multitude of ways, and you don't have to be a spiritualist for them to happen. Most people that have some type of prayerful / meditative practice have had something of these types of experiences happen to them. Now, it's not always consistent. And I will say, maybe I'm a bit prejudiced with this, but I do know that if you're sitting in prayerful meditation, and I don't mean repetitive prayers that you've learned out of a book that you just recite with no meaning or no heart, and that's not always the case as well, but people tend to get stuck on that. Well, I've said my one prayer today, so I should be right? It's sort of, this is how it is. But the sitting in real devotion from the heart, to be used by the spirit world for the betterment of others in some way. And remember, it's the little things that change the world. It's the little things through which we help others. It's not the grand gesture all the time, although it would be nice. I think there's a lot about humility, which we'll talk about as these podcasts go on, that we are always subject to and have to be reminded of. But those experiences, to me, are little signposts all the time that help us keep reaching, that help us keep on our path in some way, because they confirm and they keep reaffirming. And we can talk about, yes, there's a psychic level, and there's the inspired spiritual world from guidance and the intelligence of the spirit world that'll work through us, which is primarily what is happening most of the time. But the psychic responses are also part of that. They're mixed in there. I know people talk about, well, this is the psychic and this is spiritual inspiration, and I find for the most part there's more crossover than most people either realize or are prepared or willing to concede that that's a possibility. I don't see them in two separate worlds the way a lot of other people do. Because as an instrument, and that's what we are first, we classify people as mediums and healers, and inspirational writers and inspirational speakers, and the list goes on. I just like to think, first, I'm an instrument, plain and simple. And I ask people when they take my courses, do you want to be a psychic, a medium, or a mystic? Of course, you can tell by my body language, it's number 3 is the one that you should be working towards. Because a mystic will have every type of experience and will be able to be used by the spirit world in any way at any time that the spirit world is directing it. The higher intelligence, which is part of the higher intelligence of God. They represent, in a way, the God intelligence. They're not God, but it's like they're tapped into it a little closer than we are. And so through them it comes to us when our I'm going to say this, our higher minds, our higher spiritual minds are awake, when they're alive. I had a lovely medium say this once to me, and I completely agreed with it, and I totally understood it before she said it, in a way, because we were discussing this topic. But we were talking about intuition, and she said, Alan, intuition is the highest form of intelligence, and it is when you think about it. And people think, well, intuition is all about feeling. It's the way I feel. And actually, my friends out there, it's not that personal at first. Intuition, spirit intuition, akin to when, if you've ever had pure clairaudience experience, and I've had several of them, when you hear a voice say something like to you, okay, Harry will be dead before Pat gets back from Europe, or from England, was the exact phrase. And it was said to me in a restaurant in my left ear. There was no emotion to that. There was no emotion that came from the spirit world. It was a pure directive. It was pure intelligence speaking to me. It was like, think of it, it was like Spock mind meld. There was no emotional power that came with it. It was pure intuitive, but intelligence. The emotion came after, when I had to figure out how I was going to deal with this, and that's another story. But I had to somehow transmit that message to a particular person, so I couldn't do it directly. I had to sort of come in the back door. But fortunately, I had someone in my life that I could turn to them, and it was my wife at the time, and say, this is what I heard, and it was discussing. It was actually about her mother and her mother's trip, and who was going to pass before she got back. And my wife just said to me, "You can't say that, you know." And I said, "Yeah, I know. Don't worry, honey." So I had to find a way to say it, and I did. But I never had an emotional response until after the cycle of me saying the information had happened. Whenever you receive something that powerful and clear and distinct from the spirit world, there is never an emotion that is immediate with it. It's intuitive, but it's not about your feeling. We have this crazy talk right now out in the world. The more I listen to it, the more I just hear the word I hear in my head all the time when I hear these young people talk. It's so incredibly selfish about themselves. It's like, oh my God, how many drive-through McDonald's bad foods are you going to eat? Because it's exactly what it is. Just keep feeding me, because I can't get enough. I'm sorry, but for the people who won't like that, that's the way it is. It's true. And I don't blame them. They've been kind of raised to kind of go along with this. And when you're a young person, it's very easy to be kind of brought into a type of way of thinking. And God knows enough groups in the world have done that. We can think of lots of groups through history who've done that with young people and create their own little armies. And it's quite wonderful for the armies, but it's not good for anybody else. But there's no emotional attachment to it. It's not from within you. It's been given to you. And so it's pure as it comes to you. And I wish I could say that for every reading I've ever done, for every demonstration of mediumship I've done, or healing, or whatever I've done, I wish I could say I had that all the time, every single time I stood up. And you don't. And I don't know why. It could be me. Maybe I wasn't in the right place within myself to allow it to happen. And maybe it wasn't meant to happen that way. No, the spirit world is intelligent. They're not stupid. They know more than we do. No, there's a wonderful healer, Harry Edwards, and he puts it this way. Every healing is a planned event. The spirit world's already working it out with you as the healer. They're already ready to work with you. And they will do what they can through you as that instrument in that time. It's the same thing with mediumship. Mediumship is a planned event. They've already planned it before you even got out of bed that morning. Now, the degree to which it can work through you that day, and the conditions that surround you, that you allow to bother you or help you to harmonize, however that unfortunately happens that day, is what, to a great degree, allows the communication to be more clear, better, pure, more powerful, or maybe not quite as much. Also, sometimes the other side, there could be atmospheric vibrations, on the psychic plane that they have to work through to get to you. And the only way that they can do that is if you are very strong within yourself and your harmony no matter what happens, is very strong within you, then they can blend with that harmonic vibration that you've created, and it can make it easier for them. And they can do that as well to a degree. But there are always reasons why it's a better communication or not. You'll hear a lot of mediums say, "Well, it just wasn't meant to be," and that's very possible. I think it's an overused statement, because I think we forget that the spirit world also has limitations. They cannot live our lives. They cannot live our lives. We have to do that. We can ask for help, but then we have to live our lives. We have to walk out the front door and go to the bank, or maybe just do it online now. But you're going to be the one pressing the buttons and making the decisions. Spirit is not going to make the decisions for you 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Then there's no point in you living your life. But inspiration, intuition, that's all part and parcel of it. There are many people who said, I just went and bought myself a lottery ticket. Oh, and a week later they've won $100,000 or more. It's meant to be. That's definitely meant to be. So you can't, I know when we loved all that all the time. I need $500,000. Thank you. I promise I'm going to do good things with it. I've heard that so many times, and it true, the person would do good things with it, but for some reason it just isn't the thing that happens for them. There's other lessons to be learned, and that's the other thing too to remember is, and this gets a little dodgy with some mediums, but you've chosen to be here as a soul. You chose before you came back here, about the period of time when you wanted to be here, more or less the blueprint of your life. And I say blueprint because not everything goes to plan, but it's pretty darn close. And the challenges, and people think, well, the challenge is that I'm supposed to be poor. Well, actually, no, that's just the condition. The challenge is, what is that condition teaching you? You see, there's a difference between condition and soul lesson learning. It could be a condition that you chose to have, 1 or 2 marriages. But it's what you're learning through those marriages. And people say, oh yeah, well that person cheated on me, or that person did this or that. And yet that's just not the lesson. The lesson is about your own self-worth, theirs, forgiveness. And that's the biggie, people. Love, forgiveness. I could say that 1,000 times. And I think it would get lost on a lot of people, because it's much easier to be vitriolic and to be righteous and right. It's much harder to be forgiving. And to really mean it. And to work at it, and to know that it will be there one day within your heart, and the next day it may not be there so much. And you got to keep working at it. And the great mystics of the world, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, all the greats have taught that in some degree and in some way. But I will say this. I think, there's a phrase that's used a lot in Christianity, which is one that I've come to love. And that is walking with grace, or walking within grace. And it's not just that you have a belief in Jesus and to the letter in the Bible. That's not of what I speak. But his teaching of walking with grace is to walk with grace for yourself, but for everybody else. To be forgiving of everybody else. Because we have to be. If we don't, we're just going to fall back into tribalism and who's done what, and who's now the blood sacrifice to make up for what someone else did that was wrong. It will never end. It's a no-win situation. It's not possible to win. And yet that's what people think they're doing. And it's very present in the world today. You can look around. Hi, look at Afghanistan. A lot of stuff going on there. And I'm not blaming the Afghani people. It's just the entire situation. You can see where where you can these feelings are very deep and real and powerful, and it's just causing chaos and between nations and between people, between your family, between friends or friends that used to be. Those are the important lessons. And I can guarantee you, the more that you live in that, the more the inspiration that we get from the spirit world will come to you. Because when you're working for spirit, you're not working for yourself. You're not working for money. That's not the reason why it's in you to work. You might get some remuneration if that's your path for what you do in that way. But that's not why we all come into this work. We've had an experience that has brought us to our knees, and we know what it is to feel the love of the divine, the love of someone who's crossed, and know that they're still alive. Yes, the information comes, right? The all the evidence, and all, it could be names, dates, memories, really detailed information. There's no possible way the medium would even have any way of finding that out. But the love and the things that maybe need to be said that didn't get said. And the medium uses phrases that are so profound and deep and powerful, and that speak to the situation between you and the person who's crossed, that it just breaks you. But it doesn't break you in a bad way, because when you leave there, it's like the light has gone on inside you. And there's a great feeling of upliftment and relief, and you want to give that to everybody. That's why a lot of us come into this work, is we've experienced that through somebody. Or spirit came to us in a way and did that, and we were touched by it. Because they are a reflection of the light, of the love, which is the light, So as these go on in the next few weeks, you're going to see that I'm going to be talking about meditation and attunement times and classes that I will be giving for anyone that wants to take some. Readings and healings that we'll either do online or I do them privately, which is fine. And that information is going to start to show up, and the links to everything will start to show up below in the below the video on the YouTube channel. And we'll just go from there, and we'll continue with the conversations. If you have questions or a comment, and please leave some, or I'm going to put my email in there, not my personal one, but my I guess you call it my business one, or my one for the center. And you can direct things there. And I look forward to eventually, it's 2 weeks now I've said this, but eventually the phone and radio show, and we can all get started with that. Remember this too: anywhere, anytime, you can reach out to God, and you can just have a talk. The divine has really big shoulders, bigger than ours. And you at any time can just sit there and pour your heart out. And yell and scream a bit sometimes. Usually that can work. Universe isn't going to shut off from you just because you're a little angry. Either angry with yourself or them or the conditions you're in. Because when you do that, you're sort of declaring that you want something different, and you're prepared now to do something to make it different, and you're prepared to take responsibility to change. That's the whole crux. It's up to us to change. It's not for the world to change for us, although that's contrary to a lot of discussion right now. The world should be like this for me because I feel this way. Well, yeah, sorry, yeah. And the spirit world doesn't work that way, guys. That's the thinking of a 12-year-old. That's an 8-year-old. That's somebody who's still got their thumb in their mouth. Well, this is how little babies, little children react. This is not the way adults and people who are being socialized properly respond. You want to change something in your life? To a great degree, it's up to you. Yes, we're going to get help along the way. We all need it. I have. I've been lucky enough to have had that happen. But it doesn't happen until I do something. It's never come to me and fallen in my lap. Nothing has fallen in my lap. Nothing. So please trust that, and trust that about yourself, that you actually have the strength to start to make a change, even if it's a little thing. But it pulls you forward. And every time you do that, the spirit world is standing behind you, applauding, because they want you to be successful. And I don't mean being famous and having money, although that's nice to have. That's not the success they're looking for within you. It's the inner growth of your spirit, of your strength of love and goodness and kindness, and the ability to really tell the truth. Not to preach to people about what truth is, but to know the truth within you and about yourself. And that's where it really should be. Because then your actions in the world will follow that inner awareness, that inner dialogue that you're having with yourself. And it will be a good one. When we have bad inner dialogue, we do bad things. We do stupid things. We make a lot of mistakes. When we have a better dialogue with ourselves, we get better on the outside because we respond differently. We stop blaming other people for everything that's gone in our lives. And we realize that our soul chose all of these conditions to grow in a particular way. But it's up to us to see that and understand that. So, my dear friends of Seeking for Truth, the truth seekers out there, as we all are and should be, and that means we're always digging deeper and trying to know more, see more. Through all of this, find some peace. Find your peaceful moments. Hug the people you love and tell them you love them, because trust me, it's going to go by so fast. And it will be over, and they will be out of your life, and they may die and go into spirit, or something else tragic happens and you split apart. Every day, to the people that are close in your life, tell them you love them. Give them a hug when you can. And hold them in your hearts. So I hope to see you again soon, and I hope this helps in some way, and we'll talk more. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.